women only seem backwards and counterintuitive to the mind that doesn't understand them. The moment you truly understand what women are, how they function, what they prioritize, they stop being such a big mystery to you. So this video is going to be my own attempt at trying to demystify women to you and show you in plain sight just how easy they are to understand and frankly, how predictable they are. As always, it's Jason's favorite scientist, and we're going to be basing all of this in evolutionary psychology. By the end of this video, you should not only have a deep understanding of female psychology, but at least an amateur level of the ability to predict female behavior with about a 70% accuracy. You might want to save this video for later because you're going to be using this for future reference. Alright, now let's start at the beginning. The inception of consciousness and the foundation of instinct. Or in evolutionary psychology terms, caveman days. Back in these days, women, just like men, were burdened with the urgency to meet their biological imperatives. That's just a fancy way of saying they were trying to do what their instincts were driving them to do, which is survive and reproduce. But that came with its own set of problems. The first being that women weren't as adept at survival as their bigger, stronger, faster male counterparts. They didn't have the same skeletal structure, frame, muscle mass, speed, endurance, ability to generate power, etc. Those things were important back in those days for the function of survival, for both stuff like hunting and warding off danger. So to solve for this problem, women came up with what Dr. Ingo Rechenberg refers to as an evolutionary strategy, the first of many. In fact, this strategy is what we refer to as a dual strategy, that is two separate set of actions that all lead to the same exact function. The first part of this strategy was heightening their levels of awareness for observing their immediate environment. Women pretty much decided that since they couldn't rely on being able to physically ward off danger, they might as well get very good at keeping a keen eye on their surroundings so that they can identify threats before they become unavoidable. Now, as clever as you might think that is, the second part of their strategy is even smarter, which is to align themselves with competent men within their tribes. For obvious reasons, aligning themselves with, for instance, the most competent hunter in their tribe would significantly increase their own chances of survival. And the bargaining chip or leverage these women would use to align themselves with those most competent men in their tribe is access to replication value. You can think about it like cavemen and cavewomen drafted up the first evolutionary contract, if you will. The man fulfilled his part of the deal by keeping the woman safe from saber-toothed tigers and keeping her well fed and protected and sheltered. And the woman in turn gave him a chance to keep his genes alive in the gene pool. And of course, since women had developed this heightened sense of being able to notice subtle changes in the environment, they would of course use this ocular jutsu to spot and identify the most competent men within their tribes to align with. Because you know, the most competent hunter within any given tribe would have vastly different behavioral and social cues than any other kind of men in that tribe. But I digress. The point is that women had found a way not just to keep themselves safe, but to extract as much value and resources from their male counterparts. But therein lied the problem. It wasn't just a few women, all women had come up with the exact same evolutionary strategy. Which means there was now competition amongst women in any given tribe for the most competent men within that tribe. And the more desirable the man, the more competition there was for him. Not women were willing to compete for these men. In fact, women were and still are very, very competitive against each other. But they had to go about doing it in an indirect and subtle way for two major reasons. One, like I said before, women weren't as adept at physicality as the men were, so direct confrontation was out of the question. And two, their heightened ability to keep a keen eye on the subtle changes in their environment had given rise to what Jordan Peterson would call a dominance hierarchy based on behavioral cues. Basically, women have become not just aware, but very concerned about their social standing, especially with other women. This is where concepts like social currency, friendship, and reputation really began to take shape. And because humans are a collaborative species by nature, cooperation from others is inextricably linked to our survival. In these small tribes that humans existed in at the time, a bad reputation could mean exoneration from the rest of the tribe or exile, which would eventually lead to death. So women came up with yet another dual strategy. One, play defense by keeping their reputation squeaky clean and doing all the correct things they need to do to keep others happy within the tribe. And really go out of their way to make good with all the other women in the tribe, at least to their faces. And two, run offense by subtly and indirectly destroying the reputation of their competition. Because the more damage her competition's reputation is, the less likely the competent male that she wants is to align with her. This is where the rise of sub-strategies like backbiting, lip service, character assassination, gossip, innuendo, etc. came from. So as you can see, women developed a bunch of evolutionary strategies and a lot of sub-strategies under that, some with underhanded tactics involved to increase their own chances of survival and replication. Now, since we're talking about evolutionary psychology, you would be correct in assuming that a lot of those evolutionary strategies were passed down genetically over time. Yes, women still till this day compete for scarce men and resources with those exact same evolutionary strategies. Now the question becomes, how do those same evolutionary strategies manifest today? What do they look like now? And the answer to that question is pretty much the exact same. Women still seek to align themselves socially with competent men, which has given the rise to hyperfixation on male validation. Again, not the validation of all males, but specifically the competent ones. Of course, the definition of competence has also drastically changed over time. Hunters aren't exactly the high status males in our society today. But for the most part, women are still coming up with new ways to get the attention of these particular males. The most revolutionary by far in recent years being the use of social media, or as I like to call it, male validation farms. Just as men have made hunting and gathering obsolete by implementing farming and herding practices to improve the steady supply of food, women have essentially done the exact same thing with social media, especially dating apps. It's all for doing the exact same thing as their cavewoman ancestors, which is competing for and getting the attention of competent males within their tribe. But now that tribe in question is the entire planet, not just a small cave they can only leave during the daytime. We've also gotten to the point where we can use technology to trick our reptilian and limbic brains to think that we have achieved our biological imperatives. We use highly processed sugars and foods to trick our bodies into thinking that we have an abundance of calories. And we use corn and adult content to trick our brains into thinking that we have successfully replicated multiple times during the day. And yeah, don't lie, multiple times during the day. All in all, the landscape has gone through a few updates, a few of the strategies have been improved on slightly, but the game and objective of the game have remained the same. I've always said it's kind of ironic that it's called evolutionary psychology, especially since the only thing that hasn't evolved in humans is our psychology. Everything else has evolved, but we pretty much seek to meet our biological imperatives just like our ancestors did. Women are just as validation driven, just as competitive, and just as subtly and indirectly malicious. It's been Jace, your favorite scientist, do with all this information what you must. Oh, and don't forget, October 1st, very important, mark that down.